Yes, it is time for another best ball draft with myself and Tyler back in the underdog streets and back in the big board streets before Tyler runs out of entries. He's down to 26. We're going to use one of them tonight. And you know us here in the Fantasy Sanctuary. We're big looking for value. We like going through all the articles. We like going through all the coach speak. And with the NFL owners meeting the way, it's a good time to be looking for that sort of stuff. We're going to get into a lot of that tonight whilst drafting. If you're in the chat, make sure you jump in quickly. We are still waiting for a few people to fill this one. Tyler, you've been hammering these. What's one thing you've kind of felt change in the last few days in the drafts?
People are doing whatever they want. Rankings have adjusted pretty significantly over the last few weeks, but it is definitely people looking at tweets, threads, listening to pods, and going, "Let me look at my exposure," and going, "Oh," and running to try to catch up, change up their combos, realizing they don't have enough of some guy. A lot of Travis Hunter, Stephon Diggs, etc. types of guys. People are just chasing up the exciting or the I missed the boat, and that is making these rooms extremely chaotic and pretty fun. It's been pretty stale up until probably the last 6 days, and this is probably as chaotic as it gets before close. Because I don't think we get anything that's gonna majorly shift anything before draft night, like outside of maybe Keenan Allen signing, which still doesn't seem like it's going to happen until after the draft.
Yeah, I think like the price of the contract that he'll get, even at this point, you're talking about losing a fifth or a sixth round comp pick at this point, and teams are going to be attached to them. I think that for Keenan Allen, there's no rush to sign. He doesn't need to get signed, and I think teams are going to be quite comfortable waiting. I still wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to the Chargers. That seems like it's picked up a little bit over the last couple of weeks. But your point on Travis Hunter, that's kind of where we're at on a lot of these ADPs at the minute. It's like the slow kind of changing of mind and the slow kind of like pulling players up. And when Best Ball Mania opens, by then we're going to know what he's announced as on draft night, which could have a huge impact on his ADP. But it definitely feels like throughout this process, there was very much, he's going to be corner. He's going to have to play corner. And we've had those nice moments like we talked about last week about the Titans and the Browns saying, and even potentially the Patriots saying that they could do with wide receiver help, and it's starting to pull them up. But I think it's going to be a fun couple of weeks up until the draft, because I still think that there's plenty of stuff to sort out. The wide receiver situation seems so wide open behind Travis Hunter. A friend of the channel, Josh Norris, put out today that he wouldn't argue with anyone about the tiers of wide receivers behind Travis Hunter. And yet our wide receiver one in this class is somebody who's not going to pick 100. How far up above that have you seen him getting pulled up, Tyler?
70s. Which I think is totally fair. If we think about it as a top 4, top 5 wide receiver selection, instantly that ADP should be closer to the 50s and the 40s than it should be the hundreds and 90s. But also, like the wide receiver tiers are extremely flat. They're pretty flat in the back end of the first. They're pretty flat second through third. They're arguably undistinguishable 4th through 7th. So I understand people kind of looking at and when you think about where the rookies are going right now, Matthew Golden, Egbuka, and Burden all going between kind of 68 and 80, all summer long, with Tet going anywhere from 40 to 55. So now Hunter kind of finding his way into the 70s and 80s alongside those other guys that there was some smoke about first round potential. Matthew Golden, Hunter kind of stealing Matthew Golden's spot in the drafts where folks are like just pulling the trigger. I'm legit shocked in these drafts when I don't see Travis Hunter go before pick 85. Truly,
Yeah. So, I mean, just touching on that, ADP of 79, you've got Brandon Ayuk, who last week we saw Schefter reporting that there's a good chance he's going to miss maybe up to half the season, which feels about right for a guy who, what was it, week 7, did his ACL as well as other knee injury issues. And then you've also got a couple of rookies around the 80 point, and then you've got Cooper Kupp at 88. I've got no problem taking Travis Hunter ahead of Cooper Kupp. I think that there's definitely massive warning signs around Cooper Kupp being completely washed. And then you get down to guys like Josh Downs and Jalen McMillan, who their spot on the depth chart feels patchy. It feels difficult to predict them. Like those guys and think that there's massive upside there. There's definitely feels like the area where you need to be looking at Travis Hunter. In terms of other guys, like a lot of quotes flying around this weekend, this morning as well, with a lot of just giving out interviews. Aaron Glenn with the Jets talked about how much confidence they've got in Justin Fields. He talked about his dual threat ability, how knocks so much in current NFL. That quote, it kind of stood out to me a little bit because he's just come from the Lions, who won and did very well with Jared Goff, who definitely isn't a dual threat quarterback. Do you believe the kind of coach hype when it comes to the Jets and Justin Fields?
I'm inclined to do so for a couple of granular reasons at this point. We know who Tyrod Taylor is, and he's looked at as a backup every stop of the way, as a competent guy, but like they never want to start Tyrod if they don't have to. That's just how it is. He's been replaced every time he's gone somewhere. And the fact that they went out and they got Justin seemingly gave him the, not only extra money, but the extra you're going into camp in the lead position for our starter spot, whereas he was not getting that sort of and he knew that coming away from the Arthur Smith Tomlin benching of last year. So I think they knew that they had to give him a little bit more of an assurance. They're saying all the right things of like, Tyrod's coming right on his heels. It's like, yeah, but if you're gonna do anything with this offense, it's gonna be with Fields reclamation, who cleaned up some things from an efficiency and turnover perspective last year in the passing game. Still wasn't as efficient as Russ, but Russ was also not nearly as efficient on the ground. And so when you're talking like, Fields is a much better rusher than Tyrod. He's a better rusher than most dual threat quarterbacks in this league. And then as a passer, they're pretty similar. They're pretty similar in sacks. So it's like you got to go with the young guy and see what you can do, because if you can hit on reclaiming what they, you mentioned Aaron Glenn and Jared Goff, but we also saw this with Baker Mayfield. No one wanted him, cast off, yada yada, and now he's got an extension. So, and then same thing with Geno joining the Seahawks. We've seen, if you were the only other viable option out of quarterback hell without a top quarterback pick, is just hitting on one of these guys that are kind of turning around their career and going to their strengths.
I think the thing with the Jets where I'm at is the Jets have nothing to lose here. It's, it's a new team. They've got plenty of time they've got that credit in the bank. It's unlikely that we're going to get to the end of this season and Aaron Glenn is going to get fired, because he's got those relationships with the people in the building that will carry him at least, I think, until the second year, unless it's, like a 0-17 season. And I think if Justin Fields is good, then you look at potentially having a complete bargain in him, and then you can work out what to do next year. Or if he's rubbish, then great. The Jets are near the top of the draft and they draft the quarterback of the future. And maybe that's what they end up doing anyway. But for fantasy purposes, I mean, a guy with 2 games last year where he had double rushing touchdowns, and he's currently available in the 125, 126 ADP. That's something which I'd be completely fine with. We are on the way, or about to get underway, picking at pick 4. We seem to always get pick 4, Tyler. I don't want to whinge about draft spots. I know that's a bit too on the nose, but like, it seems like every week we're just chatting about the same 4 guys at the top of the draft.
Well, Tom, maybe someone will do us a favor and give us something new to talk about. But I think to put a cap on the Jets speak, I mean, we saw Fields play very well for fantasy and lead his team to a 3-win season that allowed them to replace him. So the Jets really don't have anything to lose playing him the full season, because they're not paying him a ton, and he doesn't really have any guarantees outside of league year next year. So they don't have to bench him for any financial reasons like a Darnold multi-year extension or a Dimes previous to like the injury guarantee. There aren't really those things in the contract that I looked at. and they can still try really hard and have a spark and lose and have a top pick. So yeah, it doesn't really behoove them to do anything here. Do we want to do Bijan, Gibbs, or do we want to go to a receiver here for the construction?
I think I'm still Bijan over Gibbs. I mean, look, I love what Gibbs did last year, and his efficiency was excellent. He's clearly taken a bigger step and a bigger role. And with David Montgomery's injury, I think, that's what happens to running backs as they get older. But they love David Montgomery, and I just think that Bijan Robinson is separating himself far more from Tyler Algier than we saw with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery.
All right, chat. Look, we see you feisty fiends. Here's the deal. Tom and I have a lot of Genty in these contests because we had a shit ton of 10 through 12 picks where we viewed Genty as the obvious running back to take over, any of the options and lesser of, his odds to go top 10 a month ago, we thought were much stronger given the teams and their needs and their proclivities. That all said, I don't want to have sub 4% Bijan. I'd like to have not sub 4% of any first round pick at this point in the season. And I'm pretty close to that with Bijan simply because of following Saquon to picks 3, 4, 5, and 6, and flipping the board for receiver builds when the second and third round were regularly just chock full of running backs, and the receivers were a little less good to take in those sections. So it's like from an exposure standpoint, and also Bijan's workload, one of the better ones we saw over the stretch of that, and the offense could be much more stable and consistent this year, where Bijan, regularly is drafted in the top 5-6 picks of daily contests. So I don't want to just throw it all away for the new shiny toy, which is what we're doing regularly because we're so very bored the last 2 months.
I just generally speaking, and this is something I kind of felt last year, I prefer flipping the board when I'm at the back end of it rather than the front end of it. I just always feel like the talent towards the top end, which I was just moaning about, those kind of, we're having the same conversations. I'd rather flip it from pick 10 onwards and bring up players from the back end of round 2 and the top of round 3 over to that side, because I think the talent at the top of the first round is just, I'm so much more comfortable just leaning in and being about even on those guys. It feels like the ambiguous stuff is at the back end more often.
Yeah, I mean, specifically for Genty, I won't be surprised if by, God, I don't know, May, June, if he's regularly in the top 6, especially when we're talking August and the casuals come in and they look at the running backs and they go, Genty to Vegas. I'm not taking him. I'm not taking CeeDee Lamb over him. I'm not taking Neighbors with Russ. I'm not So a running back that probably works his way into the top 5, 6, 7. I get it. I don't. I'm not gonna have an issue with it. But like to your point, if I don't have to do it, I won't. And from an exposure standpoint, I'm not catching up with Genty, and I don't want to have no Bijan. Because how this contest works, we don't get any money unless we finish in the top 5, maybe really even 3 of this contest. And I can't tell you to your face, Genty definitely projects better for Bijan in week 17 of the 2025 season. So I don't want to draft like that if I don't have that strong take. And Bijan is no slouch in the pass game. So, and that's one little question mark about Genty is how much his pass role is going to be involved.
But they just didn't need a pass last year. Every time you handed the ball to him, he was going for 200 yards. So yeah, it's not something I'm worried about. I know Rich is recording his rookie breakdowns on Genty as we speak. We're about to go back on the clock. AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, Bucky Irving, Jackson Smith, and Jigbear. Obviously, Tyreek Hill just stoking those trade fires again, but I'm not really into Tyreek Hill. I know you're not. We seem to draft a lot of T. Higgins. I'd be fine with JSN here if you don't want to go Bucky.
Yeah, I'm fine with JSN and see what happens.
Just smooth those exposures out a bit. Just go say in the chat, Al Boogie pointing out, Cody, great work on his stream last night. If you haven't, go and subscribe to Offer Schneid's channel. The man is killing it, working really hard, putting in the hours. Subs are ticking up, and you'll love to see it. And just going back to Genty quickly, when I look at the top 10, The only teams where I wouldn't take Janty in the first round of best ball drafts is maybe the Jets and the Saints. And the Saints, I'd be pushing him down to what, like pick 12, pick 13. I'd still be fine with that.
I
But
don't get the Saints FUD at all. They can't afford to cut Carr. Do you think they can afford to take Genty at 12 and have no offensive line? What are we talking about, guys?
but they don't think straight. Like
They
when's
don't,
like
they
that's the
extended
problem. The
Kamara
problem is
last year.
expecting them to be normal and make rational decisions when the rational decision was multiple years ago. They should have
I
just
would argue
eaten
the
the
only thing that
shit
we can count on
sandwich.
them to do is premium positions in the first round. That's the only thing they've done for the last several years is like edge and receiver and linemen. Like they telegraph their first round picks with need. And they're not rational with how they do. They'll trade up for those guys, but I think they're more live to trade up for, Will Campbell or Ted McMillan unnecessarily than they will Genty, in my humble opinion. When it comes to managing their cap, yeah, they're idiots. But I think they know Kamara making $15 million a year for the next 2 years with no way out of that contract, and they're just trying to get out of Carr. I don't think they slam the button on Genty. Hill comes back to us. I don't care for Hill. I'm McBride or Adams over him personally.
Let's go McBride. I always quite, I'm big on the elite tight ends still, and do think McBride separates himself well enough there. Wednesday in the chat saying Dak getting traded draft night to Cleveland, calling it now. I don't see it. Like the numbers, I think what you'd have to do is you'd absolutely have to have a mutual agreement between the Cowboys and Dak to just completely tear up his contract and write something else. Because if Dak was traded, the Cowboys would take on $148 million in dead cap. Or if they were to do it as a post-June 1st trade, then the team trading for him, the picks they're sending back, just you're not getting them. You're not getting them at any point. Shout out to our guy dropping 5 Fantasy Sanctuary memberships in the chat. If you just got gifted one of them, jump in the Discord. You should see the link to the Discord in your YouTube membership perks now. Get in there. Go to Rookie Guide channel and grab yourself a copy of Rich's Rookie Guide. There's 50 players in there right now with another 40 coming after the draft, of which your membership should just about cover you for the next update. Absolutely well worth it, not to mention all the other content that we put through our Discord. Great, handsome people like Tyler hanging out in there all the time.
It's true. The other thing I'd love to talk about as I strip for money, that's where we are in this economy, is that the Jets comments also summarize kind of what you and I have been talking about on the channel for a bit, which is these new staffs, especially when it's new GM, new head coach, new OC, no one's guaranteed any sort of, last year's depth chart stuff. And, we got confirmation from that just now with Aaron Glenn saying we have 3 talented running backs. We'd like to have a 1-2-3 punch, and Brees in a good mental spot. And I know he's used to being the feature back. Well, he's just telegraphing what we've been thinking, which is this is more likely to be an open competition that's probably going to get some new juice in the draft with whoever they're handpicked to come in and compete. Brees was not good last year. Braylon was fine. Isaiah Davis was slightly better, if not exactly the same as Braylon. And the new staff came in and said, yeah, we see it that way. And we see no need to force any one of these guys into the lead role. And we're just going to run whoever we have and figure it out. So like, I've not liked Brees's price all this early draft season. I haven't been auto-clicking Braylon as an automatic RB2 because he didn't, necessarily beat out Brees nor Isaiah Davis. And the new staff hasn't given us any indication that they were going to just carbon copy last year to this year. So I expect the market to kind of start to adjust to those comments. James Cook has been falling continually. I wasn't really taking him as an automatic 3-4 turn guy, but here in the mid-4th, I don't mind it because I'm not really worried about the holdout.
Yeah, no, I'm completely fine with James Cook. I think in the 4th, it works nicely, and maybe having another wide receiver would have been a bit more comfortable. But I think that people are getting scared because the Bills were saying that it wasn't an immediate priority, that they were looking at various other things, and that right now he's under contract and stuff. But running backs don't tend to be the position that get paid early. I mean, obviously Saquon Barkley did, but Derrick Henry is in the last year of his contract. The Ravens have been talking about wanting to extend him. Nothing's happened yet. I don't think we're going to see too many running back contracts this early. And the Bills are probably doing the right thing of just waiting and seeing if an incredible running back falls to them in the draft. There's so much talent there that it seems sensible, but I'm absolutely fine taking James Cook coming off a ridiculous amount of touchdowns last year in half PPR format.
James Cook, who operated as a pseudo deep receiver down the sideline. We kind of said this last week. Talk about just repeating talking points, but I do want to just say that I think we do forget that Ray Davis did fumble in the playoffs, and one of Cook's strong points has just been very explosive and very consistent and not really turnover prone. And this is just likely he's gonna have to swallow a little bit of pride. The number he wants is probably only going to be achievable in hard to reach incentives like Pro Bowls and touchdowns and all that other good stuff. But they still like Cook, and we know that they tend to like. You know what, Rich? I tempted fate. I said you got to pay for it, and that's where we are. And that's just we're trying to just feed the machine here. If you want Rich's guide, you got to pay for me to be naked. I guess it's just like the roundabout way of saying it. Now that I say it out
loud. I've lost track of where I was, but no, good. Just James Cook, yeah, I think reliable enough player. We're back on the clock. Do you want to throw a rookie in here with Tet, or are you looking more towards one of the other guys? I'd be fine taking Tet as our wide receiver too.
No, I think, in a catch-up mode, I don't mind Tet. He's still 6'5". I think the comments, I think we're just starting to see kind of why some of the persnickety stats are a little, I think it went from like, oh, he's the automatic, first receiver for sure taken, minus Travis Hunter stuff, to, why he's been falling is probably just a little bit of character concern, a little bit of like love of the game concern, which is valid for teams picking in the first round in the top, especially in the top of the first round. Teams like to play it safe. So I think we're starting to just get a little bit of the sense of why he's not the slam dunk, guy he is. At the same time, his athletic testing was more than fine, and his profile is still big ass dude. And you can't teach speed, you can't teach size. I tell my wife that every week. So at the end of the day, this is a touchdown game, and I think in the 5th round with some flat tiers, I like guys like Chris Godwin. There's still a injury concern, a return to form concern for a guy who is, 30 plus years old. Olave's got an offensive, question mark about the environment. Sutton is probably an overpriced talent bet on like role and running back the stuff. And he was someone I was clicking pretty comfortably, and then remembered contract guys in their last contract above a certain age are the types of guys we typically see traded mid-season. So I don't want to be too over my skis on a guy that could get traded mid-season, and history has not been kind to those guys. And so at that point, it's like I'm not going to be too in the weeds on my player take. Tet's still going to go in the first round, and if he's a first round 6'5" receiver, he's going to go in the top 55 picks minimum. It's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, Rich always talks about like the Calvin Johnson type effect, that people want to go after those big body type receivers because of, just the history of them. And when they hit in such a way. Obviously, Tet is probably not going to have the most expansive route tree when he comes into the NFL. But if you're telling me that this is somebody down the back end who can really grow into a role and can prove his worth, like we've seen from rookies time again, then I'm completely fine with that. Maybe he profiles slightly better as a wide receiver 3 than a wide receiver 2 where we took him. But I feel like in these early drafts, you get a little bit more of it, and I'm quite all right with it. And, we can find some volume in the next 3 or 4 rounds instead.
Also, a fun construction note, something we talk about a lot, peak draft season, using the RotoViz roster construction tool. And one thing that you noted a lot last year was if you were going to try to do a, double running back start, pairing that with an elite tight end in order to kind of hammer the touchdowns and upside in this half PPR environment was a way that we did see historical correlation boosting it. So, that's why Trey McBride with the James Cook there. From a construction standpoint, I don't mind being more balanced in these early drafts. We do have 2 extra rounds in these, but also it is half PPR and touchdowns are weighted the heaviest. And I do think this is something that if you do mindful construction with, you can escape, the being behind at receiver with attacking young guys and it can ascend in roles and really outperform their ADP. JSN, for instance, we do expect him to be a little bit out of position, but to get more of those high volume, high value targets down the field where Darnold was good, that's good for outproducing his ADP. And Ted McMillan, a total rookie question mark in black box.
Yeah, so George Pickens, who neither of us are into, but Ricky Pearsall, someone we've talked about quite a bit, Luther Burden. I mean, I'd rather go with not a rookie in this spot, so it kind of comes down to Khalil Shakir or Ricky Pearsall for me, Tyler.
Yeah, I think I view him as having more upside than Shakir. I think we just saw Shakir's upside, and it's a very fine guy, and I don't like to pay for much safety. I think, he's essentially a cheap Jacoby Myers, but Jacoby Myers is proven to be more valuable because he does get targets deeper than 8 yards down the field on the perimeter at times. And they added Josh Palmer, and Keon Coleman is going to be someone they expect to ascend in the offense. So
Yeah.
I struggle to see what the upside of Shakir is inside the top 80 picks. I'd rather have Downs. Like you give me a slot guy, but Downs at least has an ADOT that allows him to spike, where Shakir does not. Like I get Shakir from a cumulative scoring season construction standpoint. I don't see the need for him in these drafts at this price.
Yeah, I just don't enjoy the Bills' passing offense either. Maybe it develops this year, but last year it was incredibly frustrating. It felt like outside of Khalil Shakir, nobody really paid off apart from James Cook, and I've got more faith in things staying consistent for James Cook than I do for Khalil Shakir. I don't mind him. He's a player that I'd probably want to be about even on, particularly in this current wide receiver tier. Maybe that changes post-draft when things shake out a bit more, but for now, it's not something I'm too worried about. Travis Hunter, let's pull him all the way up. Like, I'm completely fine with that if you think that works. Gets us our fifth wide receiver. Now things start to feel a little bit more comfortable in that position.
Well, yeah, with Luther, it's like Travis Hunter is at least going to go in the first round. And if we're right that, I think the opportunity cost in this build in this way, a little bit of trepidation with Vrabel saying, hey, he should just pick a position and get good at it. And I mean, that's kind of what we said is like the trepidation is like whatever position he's working in well in camp with is the one that the team's likely going to stick him with. And we don't know which position that's going to be. But, Matt Harmon releasing his work, JJ Zacharyson and Rich releasing their rookie guide work. He is a talented receiver. He's got good footwork. And if he gets the receiving role and top 5 capital, it's wheels up for his fantasy profile. And I'm happy to take that, shot at this point in the draft season over Ayuk, who we mentioned at the top of the show. Probably a likely candidate to start on PUP and, not necessarily, going to be fed like he was never a target earner to begin with. Burden may not be in the first round. And then Shakir is a guy who, we just don't see the upside in this range of the draft as our receiver. And to me, it's a pretty easy click for, that profile.
What price would be too expensive for you on Travis Hunter? Just for these pre-draft ones, before we get to the point where we have a little more clarity on him, would you take him up in this kind of range where you've got Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, or is the line kind of not ahead of Juwan Jennings?
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're getting with Ridley and Jennings. Reed's price still doesn't make any sense to me. I think you could make an argument about Travis over, depending on how you rank this back half. I have Ridley and Jennings over guys like Jerry Jeudy, Reed, and Debo and Pearsall. So yeah, I think you could slot him kind of right around Addison, where they seem like potentially similar players of really excel out of the slot and just touchdown machines in the right space, but not necessarily maybe the engine of their offense. So I think that if that's, I mean, and if they just come out and straight say like, hey, we view him as a wide receiver, he's getting wide receiver work. I'm taking him over Cortland Sutton probably majority of the time, given talent profiles. What else do these sick people want? Oh my God.
Man, it's too it's too cold in my garage, but the good news is in a few weeks I'll be drafting from a room that's properly insulated once again. So
all right, well, enjoy my nipples, best ball Twitter Jesus Christ. It's day one of my cut, so those will look a lot better in 60 days. You horny, sick fucks. Happy birthday, Al Boogie.
Happy
Thanks for the
birthday,
membership.
man. And again, yeah, if you're not in the Discord already, check out one of the latest YouTube posts where I've just dropped the link again. Well worth it. Just Rich's rookie guide, loads of contests, bits like that, dynasty startup, rankings, things like that. All going to be kicking off in there over the next few weeks with more and more content. But yeah, just another classic Fantasy Sanctuary best ball stream.
It's only going to get crazier as the draft season wears on. We're going to lose our minds. Murray with McBride here.
Yes, yep, good with Kyler Murray. I know that some people don't seem to like him, but we've kind of always been fine with him. I think that we know what Kyler Murray is at this point in his career. He was a bit disappointing in the rushing department last year compared with what we kind of hoped he would be, but he still had like 5-6 games over 48 rushing yards, didn't really get into the end zone consistently, but still had 5 rushing touchdowns over the year. And if you can add that, and if Trey McBride actually has some positive touchdown regression for the first fucking time in his life, then that's a stack which I'm very much all right with.
And I was not confident we'd push him around considering Marv is now going at the turn. Downs, I like the player. I don't think he's worthwhile passing up QB to tight end, touchdown correlation and upside. Getting a QB stack in this environment feels prudent. And I think Mooney, Kirk, Shaheed, these are all guys I don't mind and I take quite frequently, but I don't think worth passing up. And we mentioned we want to build good, sound teams with good constructions that can hit in the finals. And yeah, he's got rushing upside, and it's going to be his second year in the Drew Petzing offense. If Petzing gets the passing game a little bit more fluid and dynamic than it was with Marv coming on and not missing half the camp with ridiculous, weird financial issues looming, and then this is an offense we expected to be top 12. It wasn't necessarily top 12 week to week, but I think that potential is still there.
Nothing has been more perfect about the username, the tweet.
It's true.
Right, we're about to be back up on the clock. Obviously, we've got ourselves 4 wide receivers now, so we're a bit more comfortable there as we pick 100. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, and a tight end. Jonnu Smith, your guy who you like quite a bit. Tyler Warren sitting up there. Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco, Ramondre Stevenson. There's not really anybody I feel passionately about there. I do still like Ramondre a little bit, but not enough where I'm going to bang the drum for him.
Do we take Falling Bow or take Fields here?
I'd rather scoop the value, make up for some of the, if we've pulled one player up quite a lot already, I'd rather scoop a little bit of value and come back on that. In terms of the rest of the draft, if you just go back to the draft board, Tyler, in the last round, we saw Stephon Diggs pulled up all the way up to pick 91. His ADP was in the 120 range, kind of not so long ago.
Yeah, 120, 130, yeah.
So obviously, Travis Hunter, we took him 15 picks ahead. Today, Mike Vrabel talked about how he didn't want to get into specifics around the injury, but in his opinion, everything was on schedule. If this is what New England's depth chart looked like in a few weeks' time, where would you be at on Stephon Diggs and Travis Hunter in relation to each other? How much of a gap between them would you imagine there'd be?
We're expecting in this scenario Hunter goes to New England. It seems like Diggs has a decent chance of not missing any time. And if he does, it's probably closer to the 1 to 2 week range than it is a full pup. I think I could see. I think Hunter will be above Diggs for the simple fact that his underdog. We like receivers. We like him young. And he's exciting and he's explosive. But so it's probably Hunter, and they'll cap each other's ceilings a bit. But the Drake May love is unrequited. So probably Hunter in the 46 to 55 range, and Diggs is probably almost always going after him because of age, injury, and just pup concern. So he probably goes 5 to 10 picks after Hunter. They probably, if he let's say midsummer, if he's not going to be pupped and they're having good fine summers, they probably converge to kind of go back to back like we've seen in some previous ambiguous situations in like the mid 50s, mid 40s. And I think Hunter would make Diggs a better pick because he was better EPA and white yards per route run last year on the outside than being deployed as the slot only option with Nico and Tank on the outside last year. We saw him he was effective, but it was like the least efficient he'd been in a long time. And at least in a Drake May offense, there's more value on the perimeter than there is in the slot. I will have my question marks about total pass volume and efficiency with McDaniels leading that charge. But I that's probably where I see it. And I just won't be surprised if Hunter becomes just aggressively priced simply for the age and the explosive excitement of shiny new toy. In that hypothetical.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar with you. I think it'd be very interesting because then we'd get to camp, and if the depth charts came out and listed Travis Hunter as a cornerback, there would be the inevitable panic, even though we know those depth charts mean absolutely fuck all.
Oh yeah, and he would drop like 8
and it
rounds
would be
just on panic.
It would be incredible, and it would be a great one to absolutely scoop. Great chat going on about 2 QB, 3 QB that we can come back to in a minute, but obviously definitely not in consideration for us to take quarterback here. It feels like the quarterback situation isn't quite as crazy as it was a couple of weeks ago, where it really felt like you had to make sure by this point in the draft that you were in an okay position with quarterback. Now we're into round 10 and CJ Stroud's only just going. I feel a bit more comfortable than in the early ones where it was getting a little crazy, but obviously there's still a very thick quarterback tier. DeAndre Swift, some good coach speak for him today from Ben Johnson, talking about how much of an explosive athlete he is, that he can do great work in the running and passing game, how he's excited to work with him. That would certainly be an ADP value if you believe in DeAndre Swift. I can't say that I particularly do, but Tyler, you want to make a shout for anybody here?
God, I hate with all my heart. Oh, here we go. I love Jordan Mason. Anytime I can pull him up into this range, he is a 1B with certainty, and I think I take him over all these guys.
Yeah, I like Jordan Mason. I think that the season ended poorly for him in some ways, but like he's just absolutely going to thrive in that outside zone scheme that Vikings run. Like that's what he does well in, and I think that not being the sole focus of an offense like he was last year will be much more useful to him. So the chat's talking about like the kind of 2 QB, 3 QB thing. I generally lean more 3 QB in 20 round best ball typically, but I'm quite often I'll take an elite quarterback early and then I'll take 2 later on. But in this situation, this is kind of one of the classic Rotoviz theories of 2 QBs in a window when you take 2 QBs between like rounds 8 to 11. It's a strategy that's worked to good success over the years for them, particularly on FFPC. And it hasn't particularly shone over the last couple of years, but it feels like one with this gulf of talent in this area that could be set for a bounce back. We'll come back to that in a second, but do you want to take another tight end here, or we go into Hollywood Brown, Trey Harris? Trey Harris would be a fun one. I don't know if we want another rookie wide receiver. I'm not sure if there's anyone past that I'd pull up.
I would be comfortable quitting at tight end with Njoku.
Yep. Yeah, I'm good with that.
If there's a value, I'd rather take like Njoku's role is extremely safe. Swift's is not. So if I'm gonna break the tie to,
I'm still expecting Kirk Cousins in Cleveland.
I'm expecting Kirk Cousins at best, and Rodgers or whatever they figure out. It's I think based on the comments coming out of the owners meetings, the owners Haslam's feel pretty burned about all of the assets given to the Deshaun Watson QB situation, and so it seems like the easiest way they can make it work out. The cap guys on Twitter are awesome, and so just reading about there's 3 options that they can make the Kirk Cousins thing work, and it makes sense that Atlanta eat the cost now to potentially get a better pick either this year or next year in the draft, and then just play the waiting game. They can afford to pay the salary that Cleveland doesn't want to pay in order for a pick to get better. And we saw this happen with Houston and the Browns previously as well. So like the Browns are very used to working out, shift some draft capital for some cash and make it work. They don't have to. And everything we've heard is that they're not sold on taking a quarterback in the top. Just now, late in the game, it's that smoke. It feels like smoke screen because they're saying, "Hey, yeah, we like Sanders. He's a smart, strong guy." So it's like begging the Giants to trade up, begging the Raiders to trade up. Any team you trade up, trade out, and let them restock. And Kirk Cousins, from a health perspective, is probably more than fine and competent. It just seems like they want to bargain for whatever they do, and they're willing to make that work from a cash perspective. And but I do expect it to be better than. I don't think it's going to be Pickett, and I don't think it's going to be DTR. And the Browns will figure it out, whatever it ends up being, even if it's a camp trade, like a Mullins type or something. They'll figure out something, and that feels pretty solid.
I mean, look, this is an offense which Joe Flacco was shining in for
who got mentioned
period
today.
of time. Yeah, it's like I think that there's plenty enough reason to have faith, and I don't think that they're going to do the rookie thing this year. It feels like they've been so badly burned that they probably needed to make Myles Garrett believe a bit more than saying, "Oh yeah, we believe in Shedeur Sanders." So, I think Kirk to Cleveland works for me. Al Boogie's in 35%. Love it.
So there was a question earlier about Mims and his snap share and stuff. I mean, Peyton was very clear that, and the Broncos beat like Albright and some other guys. They were like, look, that Peyton and this staff feel very good about the wide receivers they have. They like Vele. Franklin had a rough camp, but he came on late. They like what he was able to do. Something in the last year of his contract. So I don't love Mims, but Mims is explosive. They utilize him kind of like that, like quick out screen RB anyway, and they're building the offense out of these quick hitting passes that Bo can hit and just let the guys do yak. I think Ingram is a little bit like he and Marvin Mims late season midfield usage and Ingram overlap a little bit. Mims far more explosive with the yak on those, but Mims can be utilized on the field more. We saw Bo hit that to Franklin. So Mims' role can expand in year 3, but also if Sutton is someone that's traded or, at his age and his stage is relegated, phased out, or just injured, there's growth for everybody involved there. So, at cost, I think it's worth taking shots on.
Yeah, we're back on the clock. Obviously, 2-3-4-2 at the minute. Probably lacking a little bit in the wide receiver room. I'd be okay with Cedric Tillman. I still feel like he's undervalued if we're building up a little bit of Cleveland correlation. I know you like Adam Thielen. Split the tie.
We can take the young guy. We have the Cleveland correlation, and I like plenty of the guys going later. I think we're at a spot in the draft where we can start kind of just disregarding ADP, especially because it's kind of a running back and tight end pocket, and that's not what we need right now, and it's certainly not what we're going to have to absolutely have with how we've built the team out. But yeah, I think it makes sense to invest in the X guy in this offense. Not as good as we would have liked from an efficiency standpoint, but the whole offense was weird. He dealt with some injuries.
Yeah.
At this cost, I think it's very fine to invest in a prototype X type of guy because Judy's role is kind of a slot quick hitter guy. And that's just how he's going to operate.
Yeah, I mean, Tillman, he had 3 top 12 weekly finishes between week 7 to 10. Like, obviously, at that point, there were people going crazy. I sold him for what's turned into like the 201 in one dynasty league and sold him in a few because of that. And I felt great about it at the time and still do. But I just think if we're looking for players who've displayed weekly ceiling, then I've got a bit more confidence in him than Romeo Dubs, for instance, who was kind of sitting towards the top of ADP, not try to shit on anyone's pick, but Dubs is just quite flat when it comes to ceiling outcomes.
Yeah. We can just double tap receiver here.
Yeah, I'd be good with that.
We can do that, or we can take Trey Benson as our Arizona stack at ADP as well.
Yeah, I'm not as into Trey Benson. Like, I just still have more faith in James Cook. I know that James Cook and betting on him to stay healthy is
Yep.
quite a tough idea, but I just feel pretty confident that James Conner's still gonna have a big enough role.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think with Connor and Benson's prices, it's one of the few places where I think you're well off just taking both. I think you're very okay taking both guys on your rosters, especially at this point in the draft season.
Yeah.
It's going to be a high efficiency rush attack. Whoever gets the work is going to score a lot of touchdowns, and neither price is prohibitive of any of those guys rotating in and out, especially with just like weekly injury fill in type of stuff.
Yeah. So I mentioned before, like, I kind of still think Keenan Allen could end up back in LA. Where else at this point in time do you think could be a good landing spot for Keenan Allen?
I don't know that LA makes a whole lot of sense with how the
No, it
Greg
was more
Roman
just like,
offense. It's probably
yeah,
Chicago, but I think Chicago is just waiting to see if they get the younger version of him in this draft. Like there's a lot of good power slots in this draft, like Higgins, Noel, and if they draft one of those guys, it doesn't make any sense to hinder their growth with Keenan Allen. So I think Keenan Allen, his options are have a good spot to go going into camp. Knowing from his LA days, he's a guy that skipped a lot of those like, early camp and training sessions anyway. So it makes sense that he's waiting to sign, and it makes sense that teams are waiting to sign because he's advanced age. He's good to find, but like this is what you're getting with this guy, and he's likely someone that just, I mean, he's probably this year's like Kareem Hunt in like he will join a team whenever a team calls his number and he'll go do the job just fine. He'll have some fantasy relevance wherever he's doing and whatever work he's getting. But I don't know that he's anyone's priority at this stage of his career. And I don't think he feels rushed to have to go fill in on a shit team. It makes more sense to like stay open and do the OBJ Rams thing where it's like, oh, here's a Super Bowl window. I can go join an offense to help fill in and I've stayed fresh. I think that's far more likely at this stage of the year than it is that he signs and starts all 17 games.
Yeah, I think there's some fun places, like you mentioned, Chicago. The one like obviously, if he went somewhere like New England, that could be interesting, but it's probably a bit too much given that they've got Stephon Diggs, one old wide receiver, takes up a lot of that. Yeah, just going back to this, Hartman saying James Conner has missed at least one game every year of his career. For what it's worth, though, last year wasn't the one game he missed, like week 18, which he sat out. I'm fairly sure that he was stayed healthy for practically the entire season. So, hey, slightly less tread on the tires than some players. Can you see Keenan Allen going to somewhere like Vegas?
I totally can. I just think with how these teams are set, if they were going to prioritize him, they would have.
Yeah.
And so we got a question, about like what free agents are we drafting? I think in this cycle, in this contest, it makes sense to prioritize guys that are on teams or are likely to be on teams and grow their role like right now. So like, J.K. Dobbins was someone that was going in like the 115s and 120s, and now he's going, here I've highlighted it, 146 in our draft, anywhere from 130 to I've seen him in the 150s. I would rather take guys like Trey Benson and like RB2s that are locked in, as locked in as you can. I think you can make the cases for like Tajay Spears and stuff having more fragility. I think that's for sure valid. But I do think in this contest, it's prudent to try to lock in more certainty in the top 150. And then once you get outside of that, then I think it's worthwhile taking shots on just meaningful archetypes.
Rashad White. Rashad White. Rashad White.
You're not interested. No, yeah, no. Dude, in the 160s, it is hilarious that this profile is still
So,
like.
And Todd Bowles today, like, talked about how Bucky and Rashad White are a perfect 1-2 punch. There was no mention of Sean Tucker in there. White down at this point, and like he's coming off a year where he did his best yards per carry at 4.3, never been over 3.8 before. Yes, you can point to Liam Cohen and say that the whole running game was more efficient than it had been in previous seasons, but Rashad White is going to get catches and he's going to get some touchdowns, and I'm completely fine with it. He's had, like 9 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons. That works for me at this range.
Yeah, and his role is pass down back with catches, and they like to split the workload, and they want to get more unique, passing involvement from the running backs. Evans and Godwin are over 30. If they miss any time, we've seen the backs kind of take the share, take the load. And his contingent upside is the big goal line back taking over the Bucky workload. I know with Bucky's price, I don't think it's prudent to take these two guys. And mentioned, I think, great shout from FK Coolers that like Walker Charbonnet is another great pairing of like just lock down that backfield, very reasonable prices. But yeah, the White is the type of guy people get bored of and convince themselves he's just so bad. It's like, yeah, but if the staff likes him and what he's good at is pass work, then why does it matter? From that standpoint. All that said, I do like Rico at this cost. They mentioned 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
They like what Rico does. They like him in both the pass and the run game. I like Algier. I like Harvey, but and I we could reach for a receiver, so I could be convinced where we go.
No, I think there's enough rookies there, the wide receiver position, but I'm fine with that. So if you like Rico, I'm good with it. Again, like you say, there was coach speak around it. There was not really any kind of mention of optimism for Jonathan Brooks, which seems just the likely outcome this year. That it's going to be very
your ACL in the last 2 weeks of the season, like you're pretty much done for the next season. We did have Thielen, so like even just a team correlation there, we're betting on the offense, and I think Chuba's price coming down. He goes, where's he going this one? Chuba goes 51 here, which is interesting to Green Bean. Not shitting on Green Bean, but like I've been getting him. I wasn't really taking him in the 3rd or 4th because I thought it was fragile. I thought it was almost a lock they were going to add someone in if it was someone good. And I do think Rico is pretty good. He showed that with multiple 100-yard games. But he's someone that's falling into like the 63 to 68 range. And so I think that's starting to become an interesting pairing, kind of like the Benson and Connor thing, where it's like this is a coaching staff that has said they want to use 2 running backs to change the pace, which most offenses do, by the way. But in a very efficient run offense, where both guys can get pass work as well, I think it makes a load of sense to invest in guys like that, where he should have a little bit more standalone value than Algier. Obviously, we want like ultimate spike weeks, but if we punted running back as far as we did after we started early with it, still getting these guys at cost is fantastic.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about this team so far. It's a nice one. One player who I could have made an argument for there is Jalen Noel. We put out a Jalen Noel video that Rich and Wyatt recorded this weekend. I think there's plenty of fun to be had there, but it's also there's enough guys in this range that I feel confident. Like Jalen Royals is there as well, who I believe the Jalen Royals video will be up on the channel tomorrow. If you haven't checked these out, they're like 4 or 5 minute videos that Rich has been putting out with different guests. He's currently recording the running back one. He's also got the second part of the wide receiver, including the top end ones, which will be out pretty much at least one of these videos coming onto the channel every day. And I think you should be watching them, even if you know a bit about the rookies at this point. It's just damn good content.
How many places do you get player reviews where you also get to see player highlights? Not many.
Some people are saying that the production values are on point.
Some are saying they're on fucking point.
DeAndre Hopkins
arguing away. It's the best.
I mean, look, just all got to be a bit more like on real time.
Thad, we love you. Never change. Yeah, if you don't know, Thad is one real time. He's a boomer. He's a self-admitted boomer. He has one mode, all caps, all bold takes, all running backs all the time. I respect the strongness with which those takes. I hope Shock Trauma did not take Lamar. So interesting to take Hopkins at ADP, but I have seen a few of these drafters just draft on ADP alone. I'm not really interested in Hopkins at cost, given it doesn't feel good.
I mean, look, I'll probably end up drafting him just because I'm a biased Ravens fan, but it just doesn't feel like there's particularly an upside with him anymore. And it felt like the Chiefs realized that quite quickly last year. I think that Ravens aren't particularly going to love his attitude towards when he decides to train either. But
Yeah.
we'll see. One pick away, Isaiah Bond, Jalen Royals, both towards the top of ADP. Eric Iomana, who again is somebody Rich really liked. And then we've got the rookie running back Ollie Gordon mixed in with Austin Eckler, who still is under contract with the Commanders. Reasonable bit of value. I'd be very happy with Jalen Royals here.
So would I, Tom. I was really worried. You really cucked us there, and he was going to go in front of us, and he didn't. So, praise be.
Yeah, I know that some people like kind of don't love the small school stuff and like point to his kind of lack of physicality, but I think that there's just enough upside, and he looks so good as a route runner. He looks so good at kind of separating that I think that with the right landing spot, if he doesn't have several players ahead of him, kind of really making it difficult for him in year one, that he's somebody who can flash. And at this point where we're just looking to fill out the wide receiver room, I'm excited about him.
Very excited. Arm covers asking, is Lazard staying with the Jets? Per coach speak, sharing back all yesterday, quote, Alan Lazard's status on the team is fluid. We're working through that. They added Josh Reynolds and said, is a really, really good blocker. He's going to help us to create explosive plays in the run game. I'm looking forward to him beating one-on-one coverages like he did in Detroit. And on his receivers, if you don't block, you don't get the rock. So I would not expect Lazard to stay on the Jets, considering he was a Rodgers Nepo hire. He and his cronies.
Yeah.
So I expect him to get cut soon and end up with Rodgers again.
There's no trade market and there's no movement because Rodgers hasn't signed for the Steelers yet, but soon enough.
Makes you think.
Pickens to be reunited with Justin Fields in New York. Trade for Alan Lazard straight up.
Make it happen. I want the most meaningless dynasty-esque trades of Lazard for Reynolds and shit like that.
Right. You want to take a running back or stick with wide receivers or solidify the QB position?
Well, that's the question, right? Do we want a third QB? Do we want to take it now? Or do we take another receiver here?
I'd be good with Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr's probably the last QB who I've got faith in starting 12 games at this point.
Sure. I'm fine with that. I'm totally not opposed to taking dimes in the last round in these drafts, considering, we got open competition comments back in January and February before they even signed someone. They gave dimes $4 million to make sure he came and joined the Colts. And now they're going to be splitting reps and OTAs. So, Charles asking the right questions. Do we have enough likes for a second naked stream?
Where are we at on the likes? 34. It's getting close.
34. We hit 40. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, definitely some question. When is summer? When it comes to summer in England, I mean, we're slowly warming up. We're getting there, but my cold ass garage is definitely not warm. But I'm moving house just in time for hot best ball summer, and we'll be thankfully back into an insulated room. No more garage drafts, which would be a shame. I mean, it's been a few weeks since I've seen a mouse, but I'll miss these little fuckers. But it might be nice to be warm in the winter, not have to sit with a hot water bottle.
It does not. You excited to see me, or is that just a hot water bottle in your lap?
It's 2 hot water bottles.
We got a question about would I take Cooks since you have Carr? I mean, 20th round, that is the type of bet you make, is just like a random wide receiver stack with the offense. Cooks wasn't very good, but we expect that. His price is pretty negligible. He seems like depth for what they're going into the season with. I think there are more prudent ways to improve that. I also wouldn't be surprised if Cooks I think the pairing is fine depth, but
I mean,
I would
he did
expect a
well
rookie to
enough
push it.
money.
Yeah.
He did well enough on the contract. Like he got over $7 million guaranteed, which was kind of surprising when you look at what he's done over the last few years. Like, he's had 26 receptions last year, and you can argue maybe Dallas wasn't using him well enough, but Dallas was crying out for somebody to stand up. Like Jalen Tolbert looked serviceable at points because they had nobody behind CeeDee Lamb. So I struggle with it a little bit, but if we're not drafting much Chris Olave, if we're saying, okay, well, the Saints don't have enough pass catcher, then maybe it does make sense to take some Brandon Cooks occasionally mixed in as a correlation bet.
Yeah, it's fine, but like Brandon Cooks had a 0.9 yards per route run last year. Pretty bad. At his age, like it's looking like that's it. I expect anybody else to make do. And the Saints like to just hand people money, especially if they used to be. Also, I mean, I think Derek Carr has shown a higher ceiling than people give him credit for.
Yeah.
Multiple touchdown games. I think they have to make do with him this year. He doesn't really have any injury guarantees. There's no real concern for that. Kellen Moore year one, like he has to look good. Sanders' profile doesn't look very fantasy friendly. And there's a potential that, he just, it's not going to start all season. Whereas Carr, I think, is a better bet to do that as a third. Wasn't my favorite pick, but we like to make some of our co-hosts would like to do here. What we'd like to do, I'm thinking Wilson with Tyler.
Yeah, let's go Wilson. Let's just lean into the stack. I don't think there's anybody else I'd feel amazing about. And just going back to Derek Carr, like, yeah, I agree with you, and that's why like it wasn't too much of a conversation at the time, and maybe it should have been for the benefit of the audience. But like, Derek Carr was more fantasy worthy than CJ Stroud last year, and yes, it tailed off quite substantially, but the team tailed off quite substantially in New Orleans, and like Kellen Moore might not be the sharp guy that we kind of hoped a few years ago to the point where he really is the next offensive guru. But I think that he's good enough to play at tempo, and that matters a lot. And if we get to a lot of tempo and we end up with a lot of pass attempts per game, then that can make up for an awful lot of other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Kellen Moore coming in is just going to utilize, motion and shifts pretty well. And the problem with Kubiak's offense last year was it was very much like play action vertical stuff. And if you don't have a line that can't block, it's a brutal way to do it. So when it worked, we saw him have 4 touchdown games. When it didn't work, we saw it look absolutely atrocious. We also have 2 rookie receivers on this, or 3 rookie receivers on this team, 2 of which could absolutely be on the Saints as like phantom stacks. There are guys later available, potentially. We were hoping to maybe get a third tight end with Jawan Johnson, but he goes 186 to Spaghetti, who's always ruining people's drafts. I don't think we need a third tight end, Tom. But if you want,
no, I'm fine. When you take Trey McBride that point, and David Njoku for me should be a top 100 pick, so I'm comfortable with just the 2 of them. 3 QB, we can just use these picks either on running back or wide receiver. I don't feel a strong lean there at the minute. In terms of the guys that are there, I don't mind Kendry Miller for a bit more Saints correlation. Will Shipley also fine. Trey Tucker maybe. Yeah, Shipley works.
Yeah, I
we
think
drafted too much Will Shipley last year, and we're being a bit more moderate on it this year. But Will Shipley with Kenneth Gainwell out of the picture, it's not hard to see the upside that he's got, and the team clearly loved him. I mean, Saquon Barkley was cheering as loud as anyone for him when he got that touchdown last year.
Yeah, I mean, we saw them give Gainwell 5 to 8 touches a game every once in a while in the red zone, especially when they were up big and just wanted to give Barkley rest. Every once in a while, Kenneth Gainwell got like a red zone touch that was just randomly put in there. So Shipley's upside right now is doing more with the same type of touches, and then anything if Saquon goes down on a team we didn't take Saquon on. Could they add it back? Absolutely. Could they also just hammer the more important positions? Also, we've seen them add it back and then not give that back more work because they like the other guy better. So I think potentially pretty telling that they bumped up a little bit more cash for Saquon Barkley a month ago, and then they let Kenneth Gainwell go, who Sirianni loves. He loves Kenny Gainwell. So letting him walk might be some nice signal for Shipley. And at minimum, it's just a shot on a top 5 offense, rushing offense, and a guy that had pretty decent peripherals, just got the nut worst landing spot and run out for a sort of first year rookie bet. So I think amongst all these darts, I think you definitely could do worse than depth chart as it stands, because they don't need to add to the running back room with Barkley being there. We said that when they took Shipley last year, of course. But we've seen them kind of be, incumbent focused and vet focused in Philly, given their, Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah. Just before our last pick, Mason Taylor went. He's not somebody that I think we've drafted at all, but tight end out of LSU, who's a really fun player to watch. Some really nice highlights. We heard Kev from the Devi Royal on with Rich last week talking about 3 rookies he loves to draft, and Mason Taylor was in there. And his breakdown of him was really good. Really interesting player who I've probably not considered enough at this point. I would say it's well worth going back and checking out that one. Just watching some of his film, because when I was looking for highlights putting that video, I was very much taken by him, and we'll be paying him more attention going forward. We got one more pick, Tyler. In terms of where we're at structurally, 3-6-8-2. Do you prefer the extra running back or the extra wide receiver here?
Almost certainly receiver, especially because we do have a potential stacking partner available. And just the way we built Bijan, James Cook, Mason, White, Dowdle, Shipley, I think is a very, very strong, very good 6 running back room. And a receiver, I think, a 9th receiver here for another stacking partner and just another shot on goal. Not a bad thing with, Ricky Pearsall being a year 2 guy, but, uncertain career arc. Hunter, we're uncertain about the position, but excited about the upside. And Wilson's simply just hopefully he catches a touchdown or 2 in a week that matters. I don't think season long he's going to be someone we're really counting on. So it feels like receiver is the prudent move here.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, and I'm fine with your guy Vile, because otherwise I'll just end up suggesting Marcos Valdes-Scantling or something again.
Well, Vile correlates with Bo Nix, who we just did not get a stacking partner with Ingram and with Mims going ahead of us, and then Franklin going ahead of us, all ahead of ADP.
Yeah, exactly. And shout out to Steve in the chat. If you haven't already, go and subscribe to the Fanspeak Network. They just hit 500 subscribers in the last week, and they are absolutely killing it. Some of our favorite people to stream and talk best ball with. Absolutely. Elite content.
They hit their they're I think they're 500. I think they're big milestone streams this week. Yeah.
Drop it in the chat, Steve. Let us know when it is. Tyler, hit the people with a sensual recap. This Friday for the Fanspeak one, excellent timing. Friday works nicely for me. I will be sure to check it out.
We're giving away 500 bones, so go check it out. But yeah, for us, the sensual recap here on the Sensual Sanctuary, 3692, Kyler Murray, backdoor Bo Nix, New Orleans Saints Derek Carr, Bijan Mustard Robinson, James Let Him Cook, Jordan Minnesota Mason, Rashad that boy Smooth White. Of all the times to actually reload the board, Underdog, have some decency.
Read the room.
Rico Dowdle, Will Ship It Lee, Jackson Smith, Ninjigba, Tataro McMillan, Rizzy P, Travis Hunter, Make It Rain, Cedric Tillman, Big Boy Go, Adam Thielen, Never Die, Jalen Royals, That Boy Nice, Michael Wilson, Go Get It High, Devon, PPR Scam, Vele, Trey, Big Boy, Touchdown, Please God, McBride, and David, PPR Scam, Ninjoku.
What more can we say?
What more is there to say?
It's not a lot more to say. I think it's a really fun team. I really like the mix of rookies. I like, we've added in some veterans to it, but we've also got like the 2nd-year player in Ricky Pearsall, who we both believe in. Trey McBride, again, if he could score some touchdowns and preferably not like fumble recovery touchdowns, then that would be fantastic. Yeah, this feels like a fun one. I know you've only got 25 more best ball drafts left in the big board, but if we weren't to draft any more right now, I'd feel quite comfortable that that one has enough upside to get it done. Look, Tyler, the chat's thirsty, the chat's hungry. Are you sticking around for another?
Oh, the chat is thirsty, and we hit our goal. So I'm going to give the fine people another draft. I'm a man of my word, and then I'll also stick around to answer a couple more questions. I think some good questions in chat that I would love to answer. So I'll do that after you must depart us from your cold, icy nippled garage.
Yeah, that's right. I've got a busy week. We've got a few more shows coming on the channel this week. I've got a few guests, including Dwayne McFarlane, John Daigle, lined up for some rookie content, as well as a little more best ball stuff in the planning development, getting ready for big hot best ball season, and truly appreciate each and every one of you in the chat. I'll absolutely have the best birthday. Really appreciate you dropping all those memberships. Tyler, just try and keep your pants on.
Do not donate any more memberships so I can keep my pants on. You heard Tom, guys.
Catch you later, people.
Bye, Tom. All right, you sickos. Wanted to get to a question as we start up draft number 2. Ooh, draft number 2 with the influencer 2. Very nice. Shout out to everyone in the chat that made it into this draft. I see Biff. I see Al Boogie. I see Scrotum. I kid. I see Green Bean again. Brown CLV. That's a hilarious username. So Hartman asked, is Schultz falling because of draft fear? I know from my perspective, good God, Al Boogie, I'm not taking my pants off for one membership, but thank you very much. Thank you so much for being a sycophant. I think Schultz falling simply because like projected stuff. Brevin Jordan was splitting reps, then Cade Stover was splitting reps. They've tried to kind of add youth and explosiveness to this tight end room. It's a deep tight end room class. I think it just makes sense. So, and also, I think it's boredom, quite frankly. His ADP probably should be higher, even if you're worried about all those things. All right. We're on the clock at 2. We're flipping the board with CMC at 2. So I do think price-wise, I think he probably deserves to go behind a guy like Higbee. But like his touchdown upside is a little bit capped. But it's probably boredom and just excitement over other tight ends. Him going after Mason Taylor is probably wrong. But again, he is someone that kind of was losing a little bit of his role and might go losing more of his role. Is there a starting quarterback projected starter I have 0% exposure to? That's an interesting question. I don't think I have 0% of anybody. I have some Josh Allen. I have some Lamar. I have some Jaden. I have a lot of Hurts, mostly in the 5th round. I've taken Joe Burrow probably. You know what? I take that back. Do I have any Mahomes? Mahomes is a guy I have not really taken. I don't have Mahomes. I have 0% Mahomes right now. I haven't liked his price, and when he does fall, I don't want to take him naked, and I usually don't have when he's falling, I usually don't have a Kansas City guy. All right. I think that was all of it to catch up. Let's see. They're great. Let's see. I've got pants on. I can stand up. I just choose not to. They are shorts. That's all right. You'll get. Look, we got to have some drafts that are at least off stream, Steve. Got to have some EV. I'm wearing pants. Relax. Let's see. Yes, I'm wearing pants. I was working today and I had to call my boss, so I left the shorts on. I left the shorts on because if I don't put pants on, I might walk outside bare ass naked and forget. Yeah, if nipples cost $5, cock definitely costs more. Hey, Kelly. Welcome into the stream, everybody. This is draft number 2. Tom, it's late for Tom, nearly midnight UK time, so he's rarely going to be able to join us for a second draft. But I'm giving the fine people a second draft after hitting our like goal. I appreciate everybody helping us hit that. If you are just now joining, don't forget to hit the like, because every like does go a long way to help us during this very, very fun stretch into hot best ball summer. Cullen saying he has 0% Reek and Cup. I don't have 0% of either one of those guys, but I definitely have very, very little Tyreek. Steve asking, who do I think is the best value QB after QB 20? And QB 20 is right now Michael Penix. McCarthy stands out just as the KOC quarterback. That's just been a cheat code for a majority of the the KOC experience outside of like Josh Dobbs. I think Bryce Young with his rushing upside stands out in a tier below that, because like JJ McCarthy, his pass efficiency is going to be good starting all season, but if Bryce Young's rushing a lot, then that's going to be hard to hate. I think we're in flipping the board with CMC at 2, and I'll explain that thought process here in a moment. I'm just going to go ahead and fill out my wide receiver room with grown-ass men that score touchdowns. So from the 2 hole, we start CMC, T. Higgins, and Devontae Adams. This is my second ever share of CMC. I talked to Jeff Mueller on Twitter over the weekend. The reports about him being healthy, I reached out and asked, are we worried about like tendonitis, arthritis? Are we worried about like that with his age? And he said, no, not really. If he's healthy now, they've been acting like, trading away Jordan Mason, pretty strong signal. And I'm like, that's fair, that's fine. And he said that, it's something that they should be able to handle with rest and with off season and, not working out heavily like you would during the NFL season and in camp, counts as rest. And he expects recuperation. Obviously, you have the age factor, but from a health standpoint, he's not nearly as concerned about the tendonitis, arthritis as I was for majority of the season. So I'm going to act like, healthy CMC, go Burr. May as well. If you're going to flip the board with somebody like that, may as well flip him there. Don't think he was falling this far, if ever, really. Back to Steve's question about value after 20. Yeah, I think it's probably McCarthy in a tier of his own, but I do think from a full season standpoint, he has a little bit of risk of ramp up and the recovery. I'm super unclear. It seems like it wasn't a major meniscus injury, so probably pretty bullish for him, and that strengthens my stance. I just won't be surprised if Bryce Young with a full healthy season, like with that 8-week sample really cooking, he could do what Jordan Love was doing. We could also see that rebound, not be as explosive, but it makes all the sense in the world to make that offense work. And so from that standpoint, the rushing is pretty exciting. Same thing with Cam Ward. I mean, Cam Ward looks like a competent enough passer and a pretty underrated rusher. So from fantasy, that stands out pretty strong. And then I think very clearly Daniel Jones right now, if he's going to be splitting reps in OTAs, this is a quarterback that gave us multiple 30-plus point weeks, and he's in an offense that already knows how to utilize a rushing quarterback who could have more ceiling games because he can hit some of that like shorter intermediate stuff. It's just a slightly better passer than AR with really solid weapons and a better O-line than he had in New York. So I think it's one of JJ or Bryce for the mid-tier guy. And right now, I don't know if there's a better value on the board for single week upsiding Jones. And I'd rather take him as my third versus probably a guy like Sanders, who from a fantasy output standpoint, I think it stands out pretty starkly. Let's see. Bangers and mash. That's right, Bendels. I mean, it could absolutely be A-Rich. I just think if we're talking about value, Dimes is almost the same exact play. slightly better passer though, and multiple rounds cheaper at an opportunity cost where it just doesn't. We expect zeros more often than not. So I view A-Rich and Dimes as very, very, very similar bets, and one of them is insanely cheaper. So yeah, I mean, 5 touchdown game versus Atlanta, a 60-yard rushing score week 15, 16. Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with it just given age in the position. But as I close out the last 28 drafts, I'd like to make sure when I'm in a position to take CMC, I do, in order to kind of at least have some teams with him as the guy. And let's see, like Wandale did fine, right? And Downs is much better Wandale, especially deep. Yeah, I mean, it's still I don't love it for the passing offense, but it's probably slightly better for the passing offense, like Pittman and Downs, than it is for AR, because AR really struggles hitting anything short, and the offense operates really well with the like quick hitting timing routes that Flacco did okay with. I know he's never fucking leaving the menu, and that is annoying. Yeah, it's simply that like they were going to give whoever the quarterback was going to get open competition, and now we're not even to the draft, and the quarterbacks are open competition split OTAs. And guess what? I know who's going to look better in practice because practice these timing passes and all that other bullshit. I mean, I think there's a real risk that Daniel Jones just starts a majority of the season. I think the reality is they both get yanked and come in and out, and at that point, give me the cheaper guy. Kind of like how we played the New England backfield for years. We get a falling Zay Flowers. That feels fun. I'll take Zay Flowers here. And we've seen reclamation projects with similar types of guys, like first round talents, like Kelly saying, we saw it happen with Baker Mayfield, looking kind of dog shit in Cleveland down the stretch. And then, he ends up working really well with Cohen and Co in Tampa. So I won't be surprised. Daniel Jones, not great, not good, but also never got to operate behind a good offensive line. This might be the best offensive line of his career, and it's hard to understate how effective that is for a quarterback's efficiency and comfortability. And he's still going to have his rushing upside. All right, catching up on the chat. And the Pittman risk is still that like he nearly had to get back surgery, and I've not heard if he's decided on if he still needs to do that or not, and if he has to do it. And he's also been still a middling player. I was out on his early ADP last year. Took a little bit when he fell, but just never been a big Pittman fan. But to your point, he does operate on the boundary. He's the only guy that doesn't rotate in that offense. So he's fine. Decent target share, decent red zone share, 1.7 yards per out run. So like just the most fine guy. I'd probably take Marvin Mims and Bateman over him more often, chasing a better offense and more total upside. But yeah, I think Pittman's fine. Yeah, that here pulling the completion rate, and that's huge, especially when the quarterback, the QB staff there wants to run a pretty efficient, system building off of the run game. Steve asking, what do we do with Alec Pierce? Yeah, that's the thing. He led the league in yards per catch, and I think he led the team in yards at receiver. I don't think A-Rich hurts Pierce. We saw Pierce have spike weeks with both Flacco and AR because of just the deep stuff. So, I like Pierce at ADP because he's kind of being priced as the forgotten guy, but the staff likes him. The staff likes what he's done. I think the realistic median outcome is that AD Mitchell continues to rotate, with Pittman and with Pierce. Pierce does everything they like. He's really effective. I think AD Mitchell really has to put it together and figure it out in camp, and the quarterbacks that he's doing that with aren't helping. Players don't always ascend. Pierce was more efficient than Pittman. They have 4 guys they all like. Downs is only the slot guy, so at the end of the day, I still think there's a pretty reasonable expectation that even if AD Mitchell pushes for more starting time, they probably just rotate Pittman, Pierce, and AD Mitchell. In which case, I'd like to invest mostly in Pierce and AD Mitchell as the cheaper, younger options, who I don't have health concerns with the back stuff. But it's a tough receiver core to really parse out in ambiguity by ambiguity. I haven't really been buying much AD Mitchell at this point. His price is cheap enough, but I would rather chase higher upside in the rookies and some of the more sure vets, simply because like the coaching staff just wasn't super in on him. This team does have implosion, like levels of get like clean house week 4, week 6. People are fired, shit moves around, and when that happens, they tend to just go with the guys that are getting it done in practice and in the film room, and it's hard to speculate all that right now. Armco saying, I know the Bills don't do the tush push, but should Cook not be going a little higher if it gets banned? I don't think it gets banned. Adam Schefter said a few months ago it wasn't likely to get banned. I think it's just the easy talking point right now in a boredom section of the draft cycle. I am going to go ahead and pull up. Where do you go? I'm going to pull up Diggs here as my wide receiver 5. CMC, T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, and Stephon Diggs. He's definitely not coming back. I think he stands out. He's a pretty good target. And now the question is, do I take another running back or another receiver? Ricky would be a San Francisco stack. And I think we're going to do that here. So, I mean, Cook smashed on touchdowns. He still was a part-time player from like total snap percentage. And Josh Allen still takes a good amount of red zone work, even without the tush pushing, which they did 4 times in the playoffs last year, by the way, in a single game. It's the same issue with just like Lamar. Like any rushing quarterback's taking a good chunk of the work in the red zone, in the green area. Cook's explosive enough that he can hit from anywhere in the field. I don't think it takes a ding to Cook because the mobile quarterback is going to be an issue for scoring. Same thing with like Hurts and Saquon. Hurts is still going to get rushing touchdowns in the green area, in the red area, despite them being able to punch it in from the 1. QB sneak still is a thing, and a big, strong mobile quarterback shaking off a defender still scores, within 3-5 yards. I don't think it's going to have nearly an impact that people think it will. To the running backs getting extra stuff. I think Cook is dropping because of holdout concerns, and I still think he's probably capped at like 3rd round, considering just total touches and total workload, which is the easiest thing to draw a line between, volume and fantasy points. All right, Hartman, would I ever go with one good QB then get Jones and AR for 2 and 3? I would, especially if I had like 2 or 3 indie pieces, but I think it's bad to allocate 2 roster spots to a onesie position where only one of them can pan out any given week, unless cost is not prohibitive. In these 20 rounds, I think you can do it, but you're losing the teams that just got it right. Like last year, if you took Fields and Russ, it was fine, but you lost to teams that just took Russ, right? Or any other guy that did better and held the job for longer. I just don't think it's good practice, unless you get boxed out. If AR starts going in like round 18, 19, and Dimes is going around 19, 20, and you got boxed out of QB, and you're staring down Dart, Rogers, and the Indy guys, and you've got Indianapolis, I understand if you just decide, fuck it. I'd argue if we're talking one elite quarterback, though, in the playoff weeks, I'd like to have the most optionality to hit on my total roster, and knowing that one of my onesies is not hitting for sure already makes it a quasi dead roster spot. And we know that already hurts your EV in the finals. Yeah, Darnold, Geno, another good examples of high drafted quarterbacks panned out with a change of scenery, but most importantly, a change of scenery with a talented staff and a talented team. And you can argue the staff part, but the team, the O-line, the running backs, and the receivers are pretty talented. And that's the age-old thing about like wide receiver twos before wide receiver ones. In best ball, you can kind of say it's okay because you're also looking for like single week upside and playoff upside, not just season long upside. So I think you could definitely argue that. From how the offense was running, he was running it better than Flacco for real life football, for them being able to move the ball and score more easily. But for fantasy, yeah, a more competent passer is better for that whole offense as a whole. He did run insanely hot, but like he's not priced like he has to do that again to beat his ADP. All right, cool. We get rewarded with Tony Pollard coming all the way back around to us. We will gladly take him. I like him, so anytime I can get him after ADP as my running back 2, I do like that. Yeah, because the thing is, like he could grow his role with more targets. If Pittman misses any time, or they just decide to make Pierce a full-time player, he could get more playing time. Staffs don't always give it to the younger guys. Okay, back up on the clock. T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Stephon Diggs, Ricky Pearsall as my quarterbacks. Purdy here is double stacked. Do we push our quarterback? Who took Jennings? Zev took Jennings. He's not really stacking. Oh well. Couldn't find Mason fast enough. I was going to pull up Mason and push Purdy, but worst case scenario, quarterback at ADP, who I have double stacked, is fine. Fuck you, Cullen. I see you calling me an asshat. You don't get all the guys you want. All right. Man, our chat's going off. Steve says, honestly, I think the guy Jones helps the most is Jonathan Taylor. Just keeping the offense on task more. I think AR and Jones are almost 1-for-1s as far as impacts to running backs. We saw Saquon kind of struggle. I know offensive line was an issue, but like Daniel Jones had multiple games where he scored multiple 20, 30-yard touchdowns in the green area and got the offense off the field. So I think from an AR, I would expect Indy. I think Indy brought in Daniel Jones to be a 1-for-1 schematic replacement for AR, and I think that's part of the problem for AR. I think they wanted to make sure the offense ran pretty similarly with rushing efficiency. He's better for JT and everybody from the standpoint of I think he'll hit the more timing-based short routes more frequently, which Flacco was also struggling to do. Everybody wants Ricky Pearsall. Well, guess what? I fucking got him. James Cook, potentially. The funny thing about regression, though, is that offense is the most sticky year over year. Touchdown is varied, but they don't really have any alpha in that offense. The coaching staff likes running the ball. They like controlling the ball a lot. And James Cook has used in both phases of the game. Do I think he matches his touchdowns? Probably not. But I still think he's live to be very explosive. And he is. Part of the problem, though, is like that offense, the passing offense for Arizona is not very efficient, not very good. And Kyler is kind of poor when it comes to middle of the field and red zone. All right, let's see. Yeah, exactly. You put it very succinctly. You're guaranteeing a 0 with one of your roster spots the second the draft is over. I don't like that. Yeah, it's just suboptimal. I'd like to have as many live spots as I can. Handcuffing a backfield, not the same thing as handcuffing a quarterback. You want out, Bubba? Pants. All right. Let's see. I mean, right now, Dimes is on a team. Kirk Cousins is not. I think there's like a 55 to 65% chance that Cousins is on a team following the draft, but he's not. So right now, I'd rather have more Dimes than Kirk if I was, if all things being equal. Yeah, he is very tough to push. He's come back around enough times in my draft boards that I'd like to try to push, for super team, but Mason's also a guy that comes back to the turn. So that's why I put him in the queue. I wasn't going to be mad either way. Goff has been falling weirdly. He was a guy that was getting sniped naked a lot in the first month when quarterbacks were chaotic. And now is someone that routinely falls 10, 15 picks, at least in the last week or two. It's been interesting. Yeah, Jennings is a bum. Ayuk is a bum. Kittle's going to get hurt. Am I doing this right? I'll get to this in a sec. Fuck you, Boogie, you motherfucker. I mean that with full disrespect. We'll take Njoku as our first tight end. Steve saying, I think Jones will be a good runner and get some rushing touchdowns, but A-Rich was getting those inside the 5. I do think they use him just the same as like a battering ram. I like Kraft more than I like Ingram. Pittman following here. I probably don't need to be too take locky. He can get 100 target. He's gotten 100 targets every season. Yeah, I think that's fine. Pittman is our wide receiver 7. 14 picks past ADP. That's fine. He's not a guy I have a lot of, so may as well take him at a discount. Yeah, that's Milo. He's best boy. He just turned 1 year old. He just got over 100 pounds like 2 weeks ago. He's been a great addition, great rescue addition to the house. Very big boy. And he thinks he's a lapdog puppy too. What is the Steelers' cap space? They seem like a dark horse to trade for Kirk Cousins if Rodgers divas his way out of contract. Yeah, that's actually a good shout. I think they've got plenty of cap space to do Kirk because Kirk can either come in for vet minimum with Atlanta picking up the $15 million necessity. Just depends how teams like Atlanta can pick up the salary or Atlanta cannot pick up the salary. It just depends on, if they want to trade a higher pick. I don't think that would prohibit them at all. I mean, if Cleveland, if Kirk is an option in Cleveland who has effectively no cap space to play with, he's an option in Pittsburgh. They said today that they were comfortable with Mason Rudolph. That's almost certainly just, posturing and lying. They wanted one of Russ or Rodgers. They just didn't want to pay either one a lot of money. So effectively, I could see Kirk being the emergency option if they just decide not to fuck with Rodgers. Which at this point, I think is just like posturing on both sides. I'm not playing nice. I'm getting ruthlessly sniped by the chat rats in my stream draft. How are you viewing Ingram? He feels like a guy who's needed big volume to be valuable. Yeah, I have a tough time with Ingram because Sean Payton is not exactly a guy we trust to use guys consistently or well regularly. I worry about his overlap in this offense with guys like Marvin Mims and whoever they get at running back to be like dump off options. He's such a PPR scam. That said, offensive philosophy, run 5 yards, turn, catch ball, he does that very well. So if they're making the whole fucking plane out of that, sure, I do think he's just competing with the running back that they add, if not both running backs, is Sean Payton's offense and Marvin Mims and guys who do more with that, and a quarterback that can rush. So he's tough for me. I think he's the most fine thing. I won't be surprised if he's pretty valuable. I also won't be surprised if he's basically useless. We're praying for him to get more than 3 targets in a game type of shit because he's just not very efficient with the yak. This team does kind of fucks. Pittsburgh has $30 million in cap space. Yeah, it seemed like they were saving a lot of their cap space for restructuring and extending their guys, and they're mostly doing that. Raise the camera a little bit. There we go. All right, we're almost all caught up. Arthur Blank seems like a dude who's just going to keep Kirk on the roster. I mean, this is the thing. They said they want competent quarterback play, and they want to ensure that they're not up shit creek without a paddle. They took Penix at 8. We saw that. I won't be surprised if they keep Kirk, but I do think they know it's prudent to just, get assets for guys, especially because Kirk can be a piss boy and make him throw a fit and force his way out as an anti-culture guy. And we've seen coaching staffs and teams not want to deal with that. So I think they're doing the smart thing of they're not in a rush to trade a potentially starting quarterback outside of the roster because they'll get something for him at some point. It just remains to be seen what. So fucking stocked up. It's been nonstop pollen in Houston for a month. J.K. Dobbins, likely Spears. I like Rachaad White more than most of these guys. We'll take Spears just in case they don't take it back. He's pretty explosive. We get this handcuff worked just fine last year. Price and contingency, it's not an issue. We know there's a lot of value in that. We could look at quarterback 2. No obvious stacking partners standing out. We'll take Cam. If he goes to the Titans, we've got both running backs. They're both utilized. Oops. Cleared him from the queue. Almost totally fluked myself. Rushing upside as well. Going to start all the games as the first overall pick in year 1. Ingram could cook in the red zone with Nix's rushing threat opening him up. Yeah, it's just like there are a lot of mouths to feed. This assumes Sutton is still there, Mims is there, Franklin is there, Vele is there. Vele is someone that they said they want to get more work. He was like their big power slot guy. So like he and Ingram even overlap now in big guy, run slot. And then they're taking a running back in the first or second round, almost assuredly. So I don't know, a lot of mouths to feed, and it's Peyton. So I see the range of outcomes. I don't see how he definitely beats everybody because he's also been fine in the red zone. He's not awesome in the red zone. I don't think he's going to, there's no way he touches, I think it's 95th percentile plus that he reaches like Jimmy Graham levels of passing utilization in the Peyton offense. At this point in his career, at this age, I think you're hoping for, at cost, you're essentially saying he needs to see more volume than a majority of the tight ends going ahead of him to make him viable because his efficiency is not going to get it there. And as people are pointing out, this is a deep class with dudes that can actually block and catch, which would be beneficial to the offense as a whole. They could absolutely draft someone. They need someone to long term. They need an option. Ingram last year of his contract. My first quarterback was Brock Purdy. So I'll read out the team. We're at a 2-3-7-1 build right now. Brock Purdy, Cam Ward at quarterback. Running back, we took CMC at 2, and then we took Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, a little handcuckaroo at the running back, just chasing workload and volume and efficiency. Both guys have provided spikes and been very solid. Fading the team, drafting a rookie running back when it makes sense for them to draft receivers, offensive line, and quarterback in this draft. God knows all the defense that they need. T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, Zay Flowers, Rashi Rice, Stephon Diggs, Ricky Pearsall, Michael Pittman at receiver, a little AWU value for Pittman, and then David Njoku as our lone tight end through 14 rounds. And Al Boogie is just a salty little bitch saying it's dead in chat. You're very welcome, Kelly. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, that said, though, Bo Nix year 2, whole offense gets year 2. Defense was solid. They can be even more solid. They've got this whole draft to load up on. I thought free agency they handled decently well. And there were teams that just got worse. So, yeah, could they regress? Absolutely. Will they? I mean, the AFC didn't get marketably better, did it? Still got to win in all the phases of the game. What's up, Star? Welcome. Good to see you. Well, to catch you up, though, I was paid to take my shirt off. I have been reduced to how would Danny DeVito say it? Online whore. Give him money, he will take his shirt off. People got to see my full torso, letting my dog out a mere 10 minutes ago. And in 60 days, this physique will be transformed into something truly erotic. Because today is day 1 of my cut. And everybody doesn't even understand it. Yesterday, I had to drive all the way to and from San Antonio, 3.5 hours away from me, 7 hours in the car to go eat at a Brazilian steakhouse for my buddy's birthday. So I'm full of meats. And this week has been, it's a long fucking day. Yesterday. Okay. 2371. Devin Neal coming all the way back around is interesting. I still think I like Rico better. And nothing screaming at me to pull up here. So we'll go Rico as our RB4. I don't want to take Richardson at ADP. No, within 8 picks of ADP, just because I have Pittman, knowing that I have Daniel Jones in my back pocket. Neal goes, Kmet goes. Looking at tight end, Otten with White as a little Tampa Bay correlation, and then Carolina correlation is interest. Oh, I didn't take White. What am I talking about? Otten still stands out as someone interesting to take. It's a decent running back window. The fun guys that I would want go. Yeah, we can take Otten. Didn't love anybody there. Was hoping one of Giddens or Wright would come back. Or Harvey. They all go. White goes. So we go Rico Cade at the turn for our RB4 and our tight end 2. I mean, it was garlic sirloin, lamb chops. What else did I have? Bacon wrap filet. Well, more meats than I can remember. And then more alcohol than I thought I was going to drink too. Had a bougie buddy's birthday. Yeah, I felt like the right pocket to get one running back, one tight end, especially with I want tight ends that are on good offenses that are either really, really good target earners and efficient and or are attached to really good passing offenses. Otten checks all those boxes at his cost. I think he's one of the more solid tight end values. I felt that way last year when he was going 180s to 200s. He goes off in his tight end 1 through like 4 weeks. And it's just like a guy that can consolidate that kind of volume with guys being out. Contingent value is still solid. And we saw that then even when he was out with injury, sadly in the playoffs, his backup was still getting a lot of volume. So that role in Tampa Bay is valuable with a valuable offense. And very few tight ends you're getting this late are running 80% of the routes. And to drive 3.5 miles to work today, relatable. I think it was like 550 miles, 600 miles yesterday. Fucking driving. Got home at like 10:30 last night. Meat sweats drive. LOL, Otten behind 3 viable wide receivers and 2 pass catching running backs. No thanks. You talking about as is in the offense, the same offense he's scored well in? Otten gets nothing. His pass blocking backup got 8 and 9 targets in the fantasy playoffs last year. He's at pick 170. This is a touchdown bet, and then it's a contingent bet. Like, he's going to project for about 3.5 to 4.5 targets a week, like most tight ends. But he's attached to a top 12, top 10 pass offense. And if any of Evans misses any time, which he's missed time with soft tissue injuries several times in his career, Chris Godwin's coming back from an ankle injury that could take him 4 to 8 weeks to really return to form if there's ligament damage there. And this does not preclude them from this offense passed the ball 40 times a game, multiple times last year. Split that up. And that still works out pretty well. Do the math, brother. Do the math. What's up, Benny? But I do like your hot takes, Sharath. So don't go anywhere with that. I mean, the improved, he's not being priced like anything's changed. He's not really changed. He's gone up 10 spots in ADP from last year. I'm just saying, like, if I want tight ends in my room on my team, they're guys that could really make a difference. Hunter Henry was not making a difference last year most weeks. Juwan Johnson's not making a difference. Mike Gesicki spiked 4 or 5 times, and his nutted T misses time and blah blah blah. This is just how tight ends work. I would be satisfied with a guy that runs other routes and has just spike week potential as my second tight end. Like, it's his path to mattering is not thin compared to most other tight ends at the position. And I think he's got less of a thin path than Mike Gesicki does. Nothing here at quarterback. Probably Royals here again. I could double up on Indy. And I will, because I think I'm going to do Daniel Jones late. So I'll just take 2 stabs at the Indianapolis wide receiver room. If I take Royals here, I'm not taking a third tight end, and I'm finishing with a 2-6-8, 2-6-9-2, 3-6-9-2 build. Higgins, Adams, Flowers, Rice, Diggs, Pearsall. 2 guys that could miss 2 to 4 weeks. I think I'll take Royals here and just stop at 2 tight ends. So the other reason why I wanted to take Otten there is because I'm only going to do 2 tight ends, lowest scoring position, both guys that run 85% plus routes. Both who have demonstrated ability to earn 8, 9, 10 targets. Not many tight ends can do that. And both who have spiked over 20 points multiple times. Best predictor of future performance is past performance. And if I'm going to have tight ends on my team, I'd like them to be stacked and correlated and or be attached to good offenses that score a lot of touchdowns, score a lot of points. That's where you get actual points scored. And then also guys that I can just not take a third at the this lowest scoring position and allocate that further. And I'd like to do that with guys that at least run all the routes. And just the way I see, like, me working this team out, it's going to be a 20th round quarterback. I took CMC anchor and then punted the position a good chunk, but I think I still got a good pocket with Pollard, Spears, and Rico. So, just roster construction in mind ahead of time. I know the pockets I can hit and the players I want to target. Because I also, I need to advance from a season-long standpoint the first 14 weeks. And in the playoffs, I'd like to take teams that have underrated abilities to score a lot of points and those players to score points, or players to consolidate a lot of work. And the thing with Strange is, like, Strange almost the same bet as Otten, of, oh, look, he earned a lot of targets. And then, like, oh, he disappeared. But he did that with only BTJ. I think you put Otton on that team or any other tight end, and I'm a little worried about what Strange's talent is, because it was fine, but just like any tight end, they could just disappear from the game plan because the position's not. If you're not dominant, it doesn't run through you. I mean, people love hope. That's the thing. They don't like boring shit. Right now, I'm going to draft more boring teams of vets than I normally would because at this stage, it's more prudent and it's a better bet. We have more information on those guys. Once we get more information in 18 rounds, now it's time to like really start, dreaming big and doing that. But we're so far away from the draft throwing off a bunch of shit, the camp allowing guys to rise and fall. Tampa's not replacing Otton more likely than not versus with all the team needs they need on the other side of the ball, and the age of the receivers versus say Ingram on a 1-year deal, And here it is. 40 touchdowns, pass offense, etc. I just want pieces of that offense. Yeah, Gesicki's fine. He's very fine, but he's very clearly, at best, the third option. With Chase and T. And those are two guys who are going to see a majority of the offense. The other thing with Gesicki, though, is he's never been a guy that runs more than 60% of the routes and the snaps. And he's on a team that rotates tight ends. They've always rotated tight ends. They will always rotate tight ends. Gesicki's also old. And he's also been someone that struggled with injury. So, you really want to nitpick. Yeah, Gesicki's fine. But his odds to spike are considerably lower week to week simply because his share of the offense as a whole from snaps and routes is just far lower than a guy like Otton or even a guy like Higbee, for instance. All right, we're just going to make sure we remember about Danny Dimes and hope to not get fucked. Here, it's like, man, what do we do? I think Ollie Gordon at 215 is more than fine. I think he's probably going to get round 3 capital, and that's more than fine to invest in. I think we're just going to have to go with God and trust that Daniel Jones will be available for us. Unless we can take him now, and then guys like this will always be available. We'll do Elijah Mitchell. It's a little bit of Kansas City correlation. I think he's a talented player. Health has been a problem. He was the first veteran signed. I'm just really liking clicking stars today, aren't I? It's my OCD at work, clearing everything out. I think he's fine. He's on a team. Pacheco, I'm fading, so it's better to take shots on him. They brought back Kareem Hunt, so it's obvious that they want to address this position. They could absolutely add running back in the draft, but if they don't, it could be a boon. And they do probably want to take offensive, defensive line, and even potentially receiver. And as the chat saying, yeah, Ertz is basically like the Otton thesis, but older. And Ertz probably belongs right around that Otton tier of running a lot of the routes and getting a lot of the red zone work. Tight ends that earn targets in the red zone is a skill, and it's underrated. And it's what separates the guys that really spike from the guys that don't. I'm holding you to this. If this team wins, I'm going to post shirtless. Label it shirtless team win. Lots of good late tight end options. I think the ones I don't really care for the most are guys like Jatavian Sanders. Tommy Tremble re-signed. They kind of split him. Taysom Hill's an awful click at this point as a 35-year-old, 34-year-old coming off an ACL tear late in the season. That's pretty rough. Yeah, I enjoy the Ertz click. I do just recognize he is old as fuck, and we did see him fall off a cliff with health not so long ago. So there's only so much that I can keep up. Yeah, I do think there's a little bit of a projection with Strange. Theo, Bellinger and Theo handshake emoji of RAS scores that were taken. He could easily, I don't mind him as a click, but he could easily be replaced in this draft class. And this is a team that just keeps drafting young tight ends and then rotating whoever. Goddard at 160 is very nice. I'm jealous. Anytime you can get a really good player who hasn't been drafted or hasn't been traded, but it's getting drafted like he's traded. And it's like he could get traded to a team where there's a clearer path for him to matter. But Goddard, same type of thing of like, hey, good offense and score touchdowns. And it's a guy who's been able to consolidate all the targets and let the offense run through them. That's important. That's awesome for fantasy. That's fucking awesome. I don't know. They're talking about win now mode, and you don't normally make a rookie tight end selection if you're a win now mode outside of Bowers. And there's not a Bowers type of player in this draft at the position. Higbie's my largest stance, but that was because I was taking a lot of him early as a last round click with touchdown upside. Yeah, same. I'm sitting around like 36% or something. It's probably too much, but I think it's very clear that they're talking about extending Kyron today, win now mode. McVay loves Higbee, loves what he can do with Higbee, the versatility in the offense. Like schematically, a guy that can block and catch just opens up what they can do in their offense. And I don't think that's easily replaced in the trust department. And the fact that he came back at his age and was able to put up massive. Now, Adams hurts the total touchdown ceiling season long, but I think that just shows that like this passing offense is due to really, really boom and spike from a touchdown perspective on paper, and that's really good. Oh, and to finish the finer point on Jatavian Sanders is that he was fine to okay, struggled a little bit with health. They did rotate with Trimble a little bit. And this is a draft class where they could just try to upgrade with a better athlete because Jatavian did test like garbage. And there's it's a great class for tight ends. So there's very few tight ends I feel are super, super safe. And it's almost assuredly going to be the really good ones. All right, cool. We get our Daniel Jones 20th round pick. And we're taking because we do have 2 Indianapolis guys that we did end up taking. Because I am trying to diversify my portfolio late and make sure I do not ignore total teams. Talking about the Rams, not the Raiders. And that's the thing, like Chig is like, he was fine. He got good coach speak late, but he is a tweener. And if they want to upgrade a do-it-all tight end, he's fooked. And Higbee at least is a do-it-all tight end, and offenses typically gravitate towards those guys. Of course, when I'm not reading the team, it doesn't reset. What garbage? What stupid fucking garbage. All right, we're going to read off the team and thank all you fine folks for joining us for this second shirtless draft. We end with a 3-6-9-2. Brock Purdy, Cam Ward, Daniel Jones at quarterback. Running back, Christian McCaffrey from the 2-hole, Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, Rico Dowdle, Ollie Gordon, and Elijah Mitchell. Anytime I can run back a super thin anchor CMC team from the first round, I will. T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Stephon Diggs, Rizzy P, Michael Pittman, Adonai Mitchell, and Jalen Royals at wide receiver. And then at tight end, David Njoku, and hotly debated K. Dotton in the chat. What do we think? Grade that team. I think pretty okay. Thank you, Boogie. I wouldn't have known what to do besides take Jackson Dart or Kirk Cousins as my other options at quarterback. Yeah, also the fact that he looked efficient, Higbee looked efficient coming off the ACL over 30. Much like Hawkinson, we expect this next year to be really much more efficient from a health perspective, being a year removed from ACL. You typically see players, especially at tight end, get more efficient. My brain is so wiped, guys. That's not all you're getting off. Ayo. Oh, you know what? We got. I think that team was nuttable. I think it was a nuttable team. Appreciate you. Thank you again, Al Boogie, for the memberships, dropping them in chat, just making it rain like Christmas in July, right before Hot Festival. Look at that fucking massive that fucking Delton Peck is. So appreciate you. Were we supposed to be shirtless? I tempted chat to pay me to be shirtless, and then Boogie made it rain. You better label it dog shit that I will be shirtless if I win. Starkindler saying Rizzy P is going to take him to the promised land. Yeah, you're big on the Rizzy P. Hard to say no. Oh, we got an A+ from Cullen talking shit in chat, trying to snipe me. Damn. It's all over my screen. Oh man, appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. Leave your grade in chat in the comments after the stream ends. Really interested to see what you think. Give me your favorite late quarterback and late tight end values in the big board. Like I said, I've got 25 drafts left before this fills and before we close to diversify my teams. Change my mind on players. I'm high on Jennings. I'm high on Adams. Who am I too high on? Who am I too low on? Let Tom and I know who your favorite targets are. I will start drafting those guys. I need some new late round, 20th round clicks. Who am I clicking at running back? Who am I clicking at wide receiver? I'm a Vele guy. I'm a Jarquez Hunter guy. Am I wrong? Am I missing someone or forgetting someone? Just let me know. Hit it in the comments. Thanks again for joining us on this delightful Monday. Appreciate each and every one of you. Catch you next Monday with Tom. And then this Thursday, Typhal Tower, Fantasy Sanctuary is hosting that stream. So the three of us, PPR Tyler, BBG, and myself, are going to be here on the Fantasy Sanctuary Thursday night, 7 or 7:30 Central. So see y'all then. Appreciate you. Much love.